Chris Emmanuel Paul was born on May 6, 1985 in North Carolina to Charles Edward Paul and Robin Jones. The couple had a child 2 years earlier named CJ, and they were a very tight-knit family. Chris was very close to his brother CJ. A little too close for CJ sometimes. He said that Chris followed him everywhere, and even his friends viewed Chris as a pest. But Chris had a best friend of his own, and that was his grandfather, who he lovingly called Papa Chili. He was the founder and owner of Jones Chevron, the first service station in North Carolina operated by an African American. He was very well loved in the area and would sometimes give money from out the cash register to help people through rough times. Chris loved his grandpa dearly and would spend countless hours working at the shop with him. Chris considered Papa Chili his best friend and says he's learned the most in life from him. But the time he wasn't spending at the shop, Chris spent playing sports. His dad was once an athlete and taught his boys basketball and football. He even coached them on different sports teams during their childhood. When Chris was 3, his dad bought a pair of Fisher-Price baskets and set up a court with red tape in the basement. He then watched his sons go at it. Despite this, Chris grew up enjoying football more than basketball. Although he won several AAU national tournaments as a kid, he went to the National Pop Warner Football Championships playing quarterback and linebacker on the junior Pee Wee team called the Louisville Titans. His coaches described him as a smart, fast, and charismatic leader. Just a quick fun fact, in 1997, he played in the same AAU tournament as LeBron James. LeBron was 5'7" at the time, and Chris was only 5'1", and they both wore the same jersey numbers as they do now. When Chris was ready for his freshman year at West Forsyth High School, he did not expect to make the varsity basketball squad. His brother CJ was already the team's best player, and standing a good 4 inches below 6 feet, Chris Paul simply couldn't match up physically with taller and stronger kids. While CJ stunned the West Forsyth crowds, Chris logged his first 2 seasons on the junior varsity team. However, Chris's game began to blossom in his junior year after CJ headed to Hampton University on a basketball scholarship. Chris grew to nearly 6 feet without losing any speed or quickness. He led West Forsyth to a 26-4 record in the semifinals of the state. Along the way, he averaged 25 points, 5.3 assists, and 4.4 steals. That year, he won Central Piedmont Player of the Year. His charisma was contagious as well. He was president of his high school class for 3 years. It wasn't long before the college coaches came knocking. Chris was recruited by loads of schools, including North Carolina, but his mind was set on Wake Forest. He made an oral commitment to the school as a junior and then showed up so often on campus to work out that it seemed like he had already joined the team. In November of 2002, Chris officially signed a letter of intent to Wake Forest. This was a huge accomplishment for Chris, and of course, his best friend Papa Chili came to support. After the ceremony, Papa Chili was the one to proudly place the Wake Forest hat on his grandson's head. The very next day, Papa Chili had closed his service station and was getting grocery bags out of his van when 5 teenagers started sprinting towards him. Using tape they'd bought that day at the drugstore, they bound his head, neck, and hands, taped his mouth shut, and began beating Papa Chili with pipes until his heart stopped, all for just the cash in his wallet. Chris and his family were shattered. Nearly 2,000 people attended the funeral. Chris was grieving especially hard because even throughout high school, he spent every summer working with his grandpa. Papa Chili had been his best friend since a kid, and to lose him so abruptly and only a day after one of Chris's biggest accomplishments hurt badly. 2 days after the murder, Chris Paul had a game against Parkland High. To honor his grandfather's memory, he was determined to score 61 points. Chris poured in 32 in the first half. With less than 3 minutes to go, his total stood at 59 points. Chris drove the lane, got fouled, and flipped up a layup that rolled in, which put him at 61 points. After intentionally shooting an air ball from the foul line, he came out of the game and collapsed in his father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Today, those boys who committed the murder are men sitting in prisons across the state of North Carolina, some serving 14-year terms, some life. The odd thing is that Chris Paul wants them free. He said, "These guys were 14 and 15 years old at the time with a lot of life ahead of them. I wish I could talk to them and tell them, I forgive you. I hate to know that they're going to be in jail for such a long time. I hate it. Even though I miss my granddad, I understand he's not coming back. At the time, it made me feel good when I heard they went away for life. But now that I'm older, when I think of all the things I've seen in my life, no, I don't want that. Chris said that his grandfather taught him more than he could ever learn with a PhD. Every national anthem in college, he'd hold his grandfather's laminated obituary in his hand and pray before tip-off. This experience helped shape Chris Paul into the man he is today. Though West Forsyth came up short in its bid for the 4A state title, Chris was unquestionably North Carolina's top high schooler. He ended the season with phenomenal stats, including 30.8 points a game, 8 assists, 6 steals, and 5 rebounds. He was named to USA's Today All-USA High School second team and Parade All-American. AP voted him North Carolina High School Player of the Year, and the Charlotte Observer recognized him as North Carolina's Mr. Basketball. That summer was when Chris Paul said he really met and became great friends with LeBron James when they were teammates in an AAU tournament in Cleveland in 2003. They are still best friends to this day. They are each godparents to each other's kids, and Chris was there for the birth of both of LeBron's sons. They were in each other's weddings, and their wives are even best friends. That tight bond was created all the way back in 2003 during their high school days. Chris headed to Wake Forest for the 03-04 season, already a star, and his teammates could not have been happier to welcome him. Chris fit in perfectly with the backcourt of long-range shooter Justin Gray. Chris's first real test at the collegiate level came against Indiana in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. He passed with flying colors, posting 20 points and 8 assists in a 167-point victory. The Hoosiers coach Mike Davis called the Frosh the best point guard his team had ever faced. Chris Paul and Justin Gray developed into a dynamic duo as guards. With Chris's ability to break down opponents and Gray's limitless range from the perimeter, they were wonderful complements for each other. Chris went on to earn honors as the ACC Rookie of the Year. He averaged 14.8 points and 5.9 assists, and he led the team in assists, steals, three-point percentage, free throws, and free throw percentage. He was also voted to the All-ACC Defensive Team. College Insider, The Sporting News, and Basketball Times all rated him as the nation's best freshman. During that summer, he helped the U.S. junior national team to an international title in Canada. He lived up to his hype during his sophomore years as well, and the team ended with a 27-6 record under Chris's leadership. Although he really valued education, NBA teams were circling like sharks. Promises of being a lottery pick were enough to make Chris Paul declare for the draft. The teams showing the most interest in Chris were the Hornets, Atlanta Hawks, and the Charlotte Bobcats. Chris Paul ended up being drafted 4th overall to the New Orleans Hornets. The Hornets in 2005 were coming off an 18-64 record season, and their best player was a center named Jamal Magloire. Then, Magloire was shipped to Milwaukee before the season began. To make matters worse, New Orleans was dealt a severe blow when Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast, including their stadium. The Hornets did not play any home games in New Orleans that year, and instead played those games in Oklahoma City. The Hornets improved by 20 games, and Chris was named the Western Conference Rookie of the Month every month of the season. At year's end, he was a shoo-in for Rookie of the Year. Chris averaged 16.1 points and 7.8 assists and provided amazing leadership to the Hornets in his first year. Chris showed marked improvement in virtually every area during his second NBA season while the team played in Oklahoma City for the second straight year. Unfortunately, injuries nagged Chris all year. He ended up sitting for a total of 18 games, and the Hornets barely missed the playoffs that year. Healthy and motivated for the 07-08 season, Chris set his sights on the playoffs and a spot in the All-Star game, which would be played in New Orleans that February. The Hornets returned home after a 2-year hiatus and gave their fans a wonderful treat, finishing with 56 victories, the second best in the NBA. Chris Paul led the league in steals and assists that year and was in the discussion for MVP. He also made the All-Star game, and the hometown hero was able to give the New Orleans crowd a show. They entered the playoffs for the first time in Hornets history, with Chris Paul leading the way. They faced the San Antonio Spurs in the second round, and Paul gave a good fight, dropping 30 points on Tony Parker in Game 2, but the Spurs ended up winning the series. The 2008-2009 season was a rocky one for the Hornets. They struggled with consistency, and the team tried to shake things up by trading center Tyson Chandler to Oklahoma City, but the trade was met with great disapproval from Chris, the teammates, and even the fans. When Chandler failed his physical, he returned to the team and the Hornets got a chance at a do-over. New Orleans finished with 49 wins and made it to the playoffs, but were eliminated in the first round. That year, Chris was named to the All-NBA Defensive First Team and was Second Team All-NBA. In the 2009-2010 season, the Hornets got off to a terrible start. Coach Byron Scott was fired less than 2 years after guiding New Orleans to a division title. Chris was irritated by this move and let management know. On top of that, he had a couple of injuries, first to his ankle, then to his left knee. He was sidelined for 8 weeks and missed more than 30 games. That year, the team won only 37 games. The next season, they rebounded to win 46 games and went to the playoffs, but couldn't overcome the GOAT coach. My bad, excuse me. Couldn't overcome Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. New Orleans had lost much of its enthusiasm for the Hornets, and it was becoming a less interesting place to live and play. The team suspected they would be unable to re-sign him in 2012, so prior to the 2011-2012 season, the Hornets worked out a 3-way deal with the Lakers and the Rockets that would send Chris to the Lakers. However, that trade sadly didn't go through due to the saltiness of the league and David Stern. Oh, my bad. Sorry. Many league owners spoke out against the trade and demanded it to be vetoed. The trade was then nullified, and the Hornets ended up receiving a package that included Chris Kaman, Eric Gordon, and Minnesota's first-round pick in 2012, while Chris Paul was traded to the Clippers. Chris Paul rejuvenated the dying Clippers franchise with the help of Blake Griffin and led them to the conference semifinals where they lost to the Spurs. Chris finished the year averaging 19.8 points, 9.1 assists, and 2.5 steals per game, and was the first Clipper to be named to the All-NBA First Team list. His frequent lobs to both Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan earned the Clippers the nickname Lob City. The next year, Chris Paul was the All-Star Game MVP and led the Clippers to the playoffs where they lost in the first round. In the 2012-2013 season, Paul re-signed for the Clippers for 5 years on a contract worth approximately $107 million. Despite a small injury, Chris led the team to a franchise-high 57 wins, but were eliminated in the second round by the OKC Thunder, a loss that Chris Paul takes the blame for. The next season, Chris Paul played all 82 games for the first time in his career, but lost to the Trailblazers in the postseason. The rest of his time with the Clippers was the same. They never made the conference finals. He was with the Clippers until June 28, 2017, when he was traded to the Houston Rockets and paired with James Harden. The Before the NBA on James Harden is linked in the description. Ooh. And the rest is currently unfolding. Chris Paul is a multimillionaire and a gifted athlete, yet still manages to remain humble. Paul initiated a philanthropic campaign designed to highlight his dedication to his grandfather's spirit and the Winston-Salem community. He established a scholarship at Wake Forest named after his grandfather. He and his family created the CP3 Partnership in conjunction with the Winston-Salem Foundation to support charitable causes such as Habitat for Humanity, Make-A-Wish Foundation, and Feed the Children. Paul and his family also launched the Winston-Salem Weekend, a 4-day event that they host each September, all for the community. He said, "The people back home who helped me get to the point where I am today, I am extremely grateful for them. I know all the different things that took place to make this possible, and I try to give other kids that same opportunity and help them understand that sports is not as difficult as life, but all of it brings some disappointment. So there's one thing you have to have, and that's family." So this elite NBA athlete was once a small, scrawny, undersized kid who tragically lost his grandfather. And through those experiences, he fought to make it to where he is today. What's up, y'all? Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, hit the button, subscribe to join the Splash Squad. Also, check out my other channel for me, my personal reactions to NBA trades, highlights, anything. I react to it. That link will be in the description and links to all my other Before the NBA. Is that a spider? I need the raid. Okay, I need to finish this video because that's above my bed. Okay. Subscribe, like, share this video if you enjoyed it. Comment down below what other NBA players you want me to do, and what did you find out about Chris Paul that you didn't know? Be honest. I know there was some new stuff you learned. Oh yeah, and links in the description to all the other Before the NBA videos I've ever done. There's very interesting ones in there. And to my new channel. All those will be in the descriptions, my social medias, everything. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all later.
please.
Oh, it just moved. Okay.